Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the Console Convert. This video we're going to be taking a look at the best settings for visibility in Squad. Now I know I've already made this video. The previous video I made was more of a showcase, and I want to apologise for the disappointment that some viewers have had who've gone to that video hoping to find an instructional video, and they've been disappointed that there isn't much in there about how to actually make changes. I want to make that right. I want to apologise to those people who've been disappointed, and we're going to take a look at these things here today. So I'm at Kohat, which is a very important map for visibility because very open. People can see from a long way away, so you want to give yourself the best chance of being able to see them. So first of all, we're going to jump in to the standard graphic settings in Squad. So the obvious thing is to have the graphics resolution as high as your monitor can go. So mine is a 1080p monitor, and that's the resolution I've got. It's better if you want to be able to see people at distance. It's better to have a higher resolution and your other settings turned down if you've got a slower computer, because the higher the resolution, the more detail on things at distance. If you're playing competitively in Squad, there are settings in the CCFN, for example, where the gamma has to be set to 2.2. So that is where my gamma settings are. And then I fiddled around with everything, so it's custom. Anti-aliasing off. So if we switch on anti-aliasing for a second, it's hard to see it when you just turn it on like that without a comparison thing, but basically what anti-aliasing does is it kind of blurs lines so that you don't have a jagged edge to things, but when you're trying to see things at distance, actually this is probably a better one, you can see that definitely straight away. And the funny thing is, even in this, I've got some sharpening. We'll look at that in a second. But even with external sharpening, you can still see the blurriness from anti-aliasing. And if you're trying to look for a head over there between those bushes of Russian that's lying down looking at you, that blurriness is going to make it harder to see. So the first thing you want to do is get rid of the blurriness by turning off anti-aliasing. You can do internal screen sharpening here. I don't do it there. I'll show you where I do it in a second. You can probably get a much clearer image if you use the super sampling, but my computer isn't fast enough to do that, so I don't do that. So next, these settings. To be honest, I don't know the difference that it makes when you switch foliage to really low, so I'm going to try it now. And you can see there was some grass around our feet, which disappeared. But that's about it. Again, competition servers have a minimum requirement, and I believe that it's medium. For a slower computer, if you want that higher resolution, definitely worth turning down the foliage. I'm very happy to see that the game won't allow you to turn off pushes at distance or anything like that, because that, to be frank, I think is an unfair advantage. And for the best settings for visibility, I would be saying, well, you know, to achieve that you would be better off turning off foliage so that you can see, but I'm very glad that it doesn't make a massive difference. A little bit of grass here and there is nothing. You could turn that off if you wanted to for maximum visibility, but if you're going to be playing in competition, the servers are set up where they won't let you join them if you've got them set too low. Let's see what shadows does. Oh, that makes quite a big difference. That makes a massive difference, doesn't it? Again, that's the same thing. So when you start going up, you can see the detail in the shadow is considerably better. Personally, the reason why I've got it this low is for the extra frames a second. It's quite a bit less actually, isn't there? But this is the same thing. For competition servers, you're going to need that set to medium as a minimum. And then for me, screen capturing, I want the extra frames a second, so I'm going to leave that turned down a little bit. Now, blur, if you have motion blur on, I can't even remember what this looks like. It's nice and realistic, but if you turn around, you've got more chance of spotting somebody with the blur turned off. So I leave that off. Bloom probably doesn't make much difference. On some games it can be quite overpowering. Ambient occlusion is the lighting effects which make a massive difference to how good it looks. Personally, so my current graphic settings are I need to be able to play in competition, and I do like it to look good. I don't want to be at a disadvantage with my graphic settings, but I'm not going for hardcore maximum visibility, although we will be talking about that today as we explore, obviously. So I want it to look good for screen capturing, and I want it to have a cinematic edge to it as well. I'm working on doing a new video as a clan promotion thing, and I want that cinematic edge. I want it to look good. So that's where my graphic settings are at the moment, combined with maximum frames a second. The big one here is eye adaptation. Now if you turn that off, you see it gets considerably darker. Considerably darker. If you're playing competition settings where you have to have your gamma settings 2.2, it puts you at a big disadvantage to have eye adaptation off. But there are circumstances where if you're inside on Al-Bajra, and maybe even here, let's go and have a little look. If I go into this building here, and then we turn on eye adaptation, does that turn on? Yeah. If I look somewhere dark for a second, then I turn around, not getting it too much, to be honest. It starts to burn white. Al-Bajra, that's a problem. Here it's not. The main thing about eye adaptation is that if you're playing in competition settings where the gamma setting has to be 2.2, it's considerably darker with eye adaptation off. So it's better to have that on in competition modes. Yeah, lens flare I don't bother with because I'm supposed to be looking at the world through my eyes, not a lens, so I've turned that off for normal gameplay. And this is for people with slower computers, so we're going to ignore that. So there's the standard graphic settings in Squad. Now in the showcase video I also showed reshade, which I've got here. So again, I'm not going to go through the installation process of reshade. I'm going to share the same link in the description of the video I used to install it. It's not hard to install on Squad. It should be pretty straightforward. You will get a list of shaders that you can choose to install. Personally, I've installed all of them, but I am working on videos on Squad, and I wanted to be able to experiment to see what was going on. what that does is it increases the load time at the start of the game where it loads the shaders, so you may choose to not want to install all of them, which is fair enough, and I'll show you some useful ones that you can choose to install. If you want to just, if you've got a fast computer, okay, so this is standard, okay, with the current graphic settings that I've got. It still looks blurry even with anti-aliasing off, doesn't it? The most hardcore sharpening thing in here is adaptive sharpen. Makes a massive difference. It hits, I find, on my computer for about 3 to 4 frames a second, which is why I don't use it. Personally, I find that the Luma Sharpen hits for less. I've got here on my screen an additional 3 frames a second by using Luma Sharpening. Now what I did was I fiddled with the controls down here. I think this started on 1 and it didn't make much difference when I switched it on. But when I turned it up to 3, you can go higher. Can you go higher? You can't go higher. Which one can you go higher on? Basically what I wanted to do was get that balance between the visibility and it looking good, and I found Luma Sharpen to be a bit softer and to save frames a second. If you're going for maximum visibility, you probably want to use the adaptive sharpen. You can even run them both at the same time. Do you know what I mean? If you've got that fast computer, but I just think it looks ugly, which is why I'm just using the Luma Sharpen, and I'm also trying to maximize my frames, as I said. The next step is after sharpening, and also on here, another one to show you, clarify. It looks like there's a bit of extra contrast in there as well as a bit of sharpening. I used to run this for the extra frames. I stopped. That's hitting, I'm getting 47 frames. When I switch it on, it goes all the way down to 43. So that's sapping a good few frames. So they're 3 of the sharpening and clarity type effects. And the way in which you can get the opposition to kind of pop from the background, stand out a little bit more, make them easier to spot, is by putting in more colour, basically saturating, increasing saturation. There's the vibrance one that does that. Personally, I use the Technicolor 2. The standard Technicolor 2 settings are pretty extreme, and I've turned them down a bit. I believe these were all on 1, so saturation. So you can make it look pretty disgusting pretty easily. And that's the thing with these, yeah? You don't need to know what any of this stuff is, because it changes it on the fly. You can literally just drag it from one side to the other. I had that on 8.8, I believe. And I turned the brightness down. You can jack the brightness up, but about 780. Again, you can run more than one of these. It's too much. So I've gone for a balance personally. If you were going to get really vicious about this and like go for the best settings, if you sharpened it with adaptive sharpen, this is while just running 1. You could jack a load on. You could do sharpen, you could do clarity, and you could jack a load of colour in it. But personally, in fact, you could even turn off the eye adaptation, jack the gamma up, and I think that would do a good job of helping it, making it more easy. And I think that would be a pretty good way to set up for maximum visibility. You wouldn't be able to get into a competition server like that. But on public games, if you're still learning and you're struggling to see people at distance, this might be a way of getting you into it. Personally, not only do I think that that's ugly, I'm also getting more used to the game now, so I don't need quite so much help to be able to spot people at distance. So to set this back, eye adaptation on. These are back to my settings again, which for me are a happy balance between improving the visibility, getting a little bit of a cinematic look to it, increasing a bit of contrast, and keeping it soft and keeping it fair. So the decision about what makes the best settings in Squad is obviously very personal, very subjective decision. I hope going through these settings here has given you some ideas about what could change, the things that you thought you looked good, and also the knowledge to know how to do that, and how to where to go and what to start playing with to find what is the best settings to suit you. Thanks for watching, guys. Been the Console Convert. This has been the best settings for visibility on Squad, and I hope to see you again. Cheers.